We're here with Patrick Stiegman, Vice President of Global Digital Content and a longtime player in the Fantasy League that I've been a member of through many years through a connection with the Wojciechowski brothers here. And so Patrick and I have had many years of Sundays of deep frustration over picking guys who have no idea that they're doomed once they select them. We select them in fantasy. They're doomed to have horrible, terrible years, right?
I have yet to win the league. I'll say that.
The one year you almost won.
Continues.
Yeah, the one year you almost won was when he
auto-drafted.
When you auto-drafted, because he had lightning hit the house. It knocked out his phone and internet connection when we were drafting, and it was an auto-draft, and he almost won it that year. So what does that tell you?
All my knowledge of football, for sure.
So describe to people the class what your responsibilities are.
So in the last 6 months, I've taken on a new role, Vice President of Global Digital Content, and really, writ large, it's for the first time we have someone taking a look at literally the worldwide leader in sports as we've been known over the years. We're taking a look at our global digital content properties. We've had a series of internet sites or bespoke television networks across the globe in the past, but they've operated almost independently. And we decided as we took a look at where the future's going, where the growth is in audience, and certainly the ease of access to get someone not necessarily launching a new television network, but launching digital editions of ESPN.com or ESPN the app, taking a look at how we can gather that audience globally. So we are both, for the first time, trying to harness the resources that we have globally, trying to create a level of consistency and quality and ESPN imprimatur everywhere we go, but also trying to be as relevant locally in as many different regions and countries as we can. We now have dedicated sites in 12 different countries or regions and editions of either our global football or global cricket site in another 10 regions, and we're going to continue to grow. And my role really is to try to take advantage of all of those, manage our global digital content sport verticals such as ESPN FC and ESPN Crick Info, golf, tennis, Olympic sports, and also take the coverage that we do in the U.S. around sports that are relevant globally, NBA particularly, NFL, MLB to some degree, and make sure we're leveraging those resources everywhere in the world.
So, I mean, again, a company that stands still is not going to be around long. This is kind of an example of you guys. You guys are everywhere, and you want to be in more places, right?
That's exactly right.
I mean, you have to keep growing at this point. In 2016, and so you're out there looking for opportunities to expand the brand again. Again, not just
about it.
Worldwide dominance, right?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say we do want to serve a worldwide audience. And what's resonant to me is I've spent more time in South Africa and London and Mexico and Argentina and India and other markets over the last few months, is that we have a rabid fan base that are all looking for the quality and the coverage that ESPN has done traditionally in the United States in the digital space, but it's around sports that we're already covering. It is around global football, it is around cricket, it is around NBA. These all resonate in every one of these markets. No one is in position with the quality of the coverage, the depth of the coverage, and the resources we have globally to serve this audience. We just hadn't focused as much on the external non-US properties digitally as we are now.
So you know cricket now? Can you explain the nuances of cricket?
I'm learning. Been to a few cricket matches.
Well, for people who don't know,
I've got the basics.
So for people in this students, cricket after soccer is probably the most popular sport outside of the United States. Outside of the United States, it's huge. I mean, you can't even define how big it is.
It is a religion, I would say, to some degree in certain countries, and somewhat facetiously, but it literally is the most consumed sport in 10 different countries. The challenge with cricket is it's those 10 countries right now that matters, mostly around India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and Australia and England and the West Indies and South Africa. But it's starting to get a base in the U.S. Last year we had more video starts digitally around cricket in the United States than we did in any other country. Now, part of that is expatriates moving to the country or big cricket fans. Part of it is there is a undercurrent of growth of the sport. And that's part of what we're trying to put our finger on is where is the audience? at the end of the day, because of the digital knowing no bounds, we can serve a fan in Bangladesh just as easily as we can serve a fan in Bristol. And the question is, can we create the content and reach them, let them know that it exists? And that's part of our overall content plan.
Among your many duties, though, you oversee the role of the public editor for ESPN. Can you explain to the class what the public editor is and why ESPN has decided to have one?
Well, it's been a very interesting journey. We originally rebranded the position as public editor this year with Jim Brady in the role. Previously to this, we had 5 previous ombudsmen in the role, each serving 2 to 5 years. This is going back more than a decade. Self-imposed to some degree. A lot of our competitors aren't necessarily bringing that level of internal review to their properties or their sites, but I do think both journalistically, I think most importantly for me, transparency is our friend. Right? At the end of the day, I think we do the highest quality sports journalism of anyone anywhere, but that doesn't mean we are without flaws. It doesn't mean we are without conflicts. It doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. And I think the honest answer to our audience is to say, here's where we've done well, but here's where we maybe could be doing better or made decisions that in retrospect were not as well conceived as we might have liked. And I think it's dishonest to try to pretend that doesn't happen. And so what we've tried to do with the public editor is shine some light on how we do what we do, take that barrier down between the audience a little bit. And Bob Lipsyte, who was the ombudsman prior to Jim Brady in the public editor role, had a great line. He said he viewed his role as ombudsman at ESPN as a window washer. For the audience, wants to get some of the muck off the window so that people can look in and see exactly how things operate, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think at the end of the day, it served us well. It's been painful at times. No one likes to have your flaws pointed out, especially publicly. But the truth is, that's happening anyway every day. Social media and critics out there every day are either fairly or unfairly trying to look at issues at ESPN. And we thought, let's do this in a more organized fashion, have an independent, credible journalistic voice who can offer an honest assessment to the audience to what we do well and what we don't do well. And Jim, particularly in this role, has really expanded it to being both a critic, but also an explainer, and trying to help people understand how a company of this size and this scale operates. And I think at the end of the day, it's been incredibly important and beneficial for us to do.
So for people, just to clarify, these are outside people. Like Robert Lipsyte was a longtime New York Times columnist.
Correct.
Jim Brady was with the Washington Post and now is starting up websites in Philadelphia and other markets. So he's an outside person, someone that you recruited. You had people from Poynter Institute for a while. And this used to be the ombudsman or public editor. Newspapers used to have these people all the time, and now very few even exist because it's basically this person is a critic, writes critically of what you guys do, and it's kind of a unique setup, and you continue it.
And the truth of it is, from the top of the company, John, Skipper, the president, down, we wouldn't be doing it without that support. But the perspective is that we think it's necessary to invest. I understand why other media sites, particularly newspapers, for any number of reasons have scaled back the role. But at the end of the day, we think it's a worthwhile investment. And the quality of people we've had, going back to George Solomon as our first ombudsman and Don Ohlmeyer in the role, we've tried to bring people who have gravitas, expertise in the industry, but quite honestly are not going to pull any punches. This is not an effective role for us if someone is, just jabbing and not taking a hard swing. It's nice once in a while when they point out the good things we do, but at the end of the day, this is all about honesty and transparency with the audience. It's the same reason why, newspapers and ESPN have correction policies and try to be as honest and open with their audience as possible about the decisions they make. we are in the business of trust. It's ultimately what we do as journalists. And if we can do anything to support that trust, even if that means being self-critical at times, I think it's a worthwhile investment.
So Robert Lipsyte and James Brady have written about the ESPN's coverage of the Deflategate
Yes.
with the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. And what stood out for you as far as what they wrote? Because you guys obviously had a lot of social media reaction to how you guys covered that story and whether or not you guys were supporting the commissioner because you have your NFL deal, and obviously there's other pieces that have been done to kind of show that would argue against that premise, but still there's that perception. How did you feel that those two, that issue was handled by those two writers?
Well, you mentioned the word perception, which I think is the vital word here, right? Because I can tell you with a straight face and complete honesty that we have nothing but credibility and integrity in our approach to what we bring in journalism every step of the way, every day of the week, every month of the year. At the same time, perception is reality. And what can happen in times is when you make an error and don't acknowledge it, or when there's a perception of an error, even if it's not true, that can snowball. We have independent journalists, and we'll continue to focus on the independence of our journalism. But Bob and Jim both brought reporting to their point of view on Deflategate and other issues. One of the things that I think I'm proud of most of with the ombudsman or the public editor role is they have unfettered access. They are an independent voice. They can talk to anybody at ESPN, editors, writers, lowest level, up to the president of the company. And they should do their own independent reporting. We do not censor their content. We do not edit their content other than for sort of basic style and grammar. It's their voice. I don't agree with everything they write, but I do appreciate them having the voice. And I think in the Deflategate, they were able to point out a few mistakes we made in not responding as quickly as we could have to either unclear or misunderstandings in our reporting. And there's some things they pointed out that quite honestly I disagreed with, that I think we actually did the right thing, but the perception was out there. But I would much rather have them in that role, even if I don't necessarily agree, because at the end of the day, they are representing the reader. The reason we went with public editor, and Jim was very strong in his point of that title for this role, is he wants to represent readers. This is not about ESPN trying to reach out and tell the audience their side of the story. This is an independent voice representing readers asking, what happened here? And I don't have to agree with the findings, but I support the process.
Well, as someone though who's been involved in this for the long time, and running ESPN.com and being part of this reporting on the concussions and all the league issues, NBA, all your other properties. I mean, you talk about that perception versus reality, and you go out and you hear, well, ESPN, no matter what you write, you could write 8 stories on, you guys did an unbelievable story on Roger Goodell, and Roger Goodell really, was not a flattering story on the commissioner. And yet there's that perception there. Is it frustrating for you people in this building?
It's frustrating only in the sense that I think journalistically, I've never been around a group of people in my career that is more committed to doing the right thing all the time and bringing great integrity and credibility to the position. So that can be frustrating if that gets misperceived, but you know what? It goes with the territory. You look at the size and scale of what we do, I can understand why people are going to have their own point of view and their own perceptions. The one thing I would say, each of our ombudsmen, particularly going back to Don and Bob and Leanne and certainly Jim and Pointer, have all written that the conspiracy theory that ESPN is one big monolith making one collective set of decisions trying to move levers is absolutely clearly not the case. I don't know that it's changed perception, but I like the fact that they're out there at least, bringing their honest point of view to it.
Yeah, I mean, and you said in the journalism, I mean, you talk about, you've worked with and continue to work with such great writers here, and there is a premium. I mean, break news, give us stories that people can't get anywhere else, right?
That's exactly right, and we think as our point of view is that we want to break the news, and as importantly, we want to bring you the best perspective on that news when it's broken as possible. We've got unbelievable enterprise writers in Wright Thompson and Seth Wickersham and Liz Merrill and Wayne Drays and on and on. We've got incredible Pulitzer Prize winning investigative journalists like Don Van Atta and Steve Fanaroo and Mark Fanaroo. We've committed to invest into storytelling and investigative journalism, not because we have to, because we think it's important to tell those stories. And, you know, again, we're going to take some shots fairly, unfairly. It doesn't matter. It goes with the territory. We've got thick skin. I think at the end of the day, what matters to me is internally, can we say to ourselves every day, we're putting our best foot forward journalistically, and I can tell you 99.9% of the time we do, and we feel that way.
And as you said, it's a considerable investment to invest in the kind of talent that you, and a lot of these guys that I know, and and it's something that you don't necessarily have to do, but
we don't have to do it.
But you feel like, but the company feels like this. If you're going to cover sports, you want to be on the forefront of these stories.
John Skipper has got one of the greatest and one of the toughest jobs going, in part because he's incredible in supporting our journalistic efforts, because he has to take the calls from unhappy commissioners and conference commissioners and league directors and other people who are upset with our coverage, saying, hey, ESPN is we're business partners. Why would you be so critical of us on the pages of ESPN.com or in the pages of ESPN, the magazine, or on E60 or Outside the Lines on television and other avenues? And the answer is John supports independent journalism. He thinks at the end of the day, our coverage is better and we are more valuable to fans if we are both bringing tremendous coverage of the games, but also bringing an honest and fair assessment of the stories behind the games. And the support for this in this company for that quality and investment in journalism is something that we're blessed to have every day.
Patrick, thanks for being here. And I'm not wishing you good luck in our fantasy league this year.
Somehow I don't think it will matter one way or the other. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.